At 3:47 in the morning on May 10, 1943, Commander Peter Gretton held a pizza-sized metal box in his trembling hands on the icy deck of the corvette HMS Sunflower in the middle of the North Atlantic. Around him, 28 German submarines surrounded Convoy HX-237 in a wolf pack formation, ready for what was intended to be the greatest massacre of the Battle of the Atlantic. Gretton looked at the box and whispered to his first officer, "The Germans will call us crazy when they find out. Because that box didn't contain pizza. It contained something Nazi engineers swore was technically impossible, a complete, functional radar small enough to fit inside a patrol plane. Something so secret that Winston Churchill had ordered, 'Protect this more than you protect me.'" For 3 years, German U-boats had dominated the Atlantic with absolute impunity. In 1942, they sank 1,664 Allied ships, more than 7 million tons. Karl Dönitz's Grey Wolves attacked at night on the surface, invisible to the naval radars of the time. Admiral Dönitz openly boasted, "The night is our ally. In the dark, we are ghosts." And he was right. Allied radars operated on long wavelengths of 1.5 meters, completely useless for detecting the low profile of a submarine on the ocean surface. For the Allies, hunting U-boats at night was like looking for a black cat in a coal mine in the dark. But in the secret laboratories of the Telecommunications Research Establishment in Malvern, England, something extraordinary was being developed. In February 1940, physicists John Randall and Harry Boot created the cavity magnetron, a revolutionary device capable of generating microwaves at wavelengths of just 10 centimeters. For the first time in history, it was possible to build a powerful and compact radar. But there was a brutal problem: miniaturizing all the technology to fit in an airplane and survive the vibrations, extreme cold, and humidity of the North Atlantic. The project was codenamed H2S, supposedly because a scientist said it was home sweet home for lost pilots, but in reality, because Lord Charwell, Churchill's scientific advisor, commented that the slow pace of development smells of hydrogen sulfide, H2S, the smell of rotten eggs. Churchill did not find it funny and ordered top priority. By September 1942, the first prototype of the ASV Mark III radar was ready. The complete equipment weighed only 90 kilograms and fit into a box the size of a large pizza. The rotating antenna sat in an aerodynamic dome under the aircraft's fuselage. Tests were conducted in absolute secrecy in Scotland. A modified Handley Page Halifax bomber took off over the North Sea at 2 a.m. The radar screen showed the sharp outline of the Scottish coast 50 kilometers away. Then, a tiny dot appeared, a British training submarine on the surface, 12 kilometers out. The pilot turned the aircraft in dove. The submarine was illuminated by searchlights while it was still 800 meters away. Too much time to dive. In a real attack, it would be dead. The British Admiralty cancelled all other tests and began immediate production. But there was a deadly dilemma: absolute secrecy. If an airplane equipped with the H2S radar crashed in enemy territory and the Germans captured the magnetron, they could not only replicate it but also develop countermeasures. The decision was clear: only fly over the deep ocean, where wreckage would sink beyond the reach of divers. In January 1943, the first B-24 Liberator bombers modified with the ASV Mark III radar arrived at RAF Coastal Command bases in Iceland and Northern Ireland. Pilots were trained in isolated facilities under orders to shoot at any aircraft that approached during training. The equipment was referred to only as the box in radio communications. On the night of February 28, 1943, Liberator F from 120 Squadron took off from Reykjavik at 11:15 p.m. to patrol the Bismarck area, where Allied convoys were being slaughtered. At 1:42 a.m., 95 miles from base, the radar operator, Sergeant Williams, saw a small dot appear on the screen. Contact at 7 miles, bearing 340 degrees. The pilot, Lieutenant Roberts, turned immediately. At 2 miles away, he reduced altitude to 200 feet and switched on the lee lights. The beam of light illuminated U-boat U-255 still on the surface, recharging its batteries. The German crew froze for 3 precious seconds, long enough for the Liberator to drop 4 depth charges. The submarine was hit directly and sank in 40 seconds. There were no survivors. The commander of U-255 never transmitted what had happened. In the following days, 4 more U-boats were sunk in the same way, surprised on the surface, at night, without any warning. German naval intelligence began receiving disconcerting reports. Attacked by aircraft at 2 a.m. in complete darkness. Illuminated before we could dive. It's as if they can see in the dark. Karl Dönitz gathered his team of engineers in Berlin. Explanations varied. The British had embedded spies, they were using magic, or they possessed some kind of secret infrared detector. The idea of a miniaturized radar was dismissed as technically impossible. A German naval intelligence report from March 1943 stated, effective aerial radars against submarines would require antennas of at least 20 meters. Impossible to install an aircraft. But on June 2, 1943, the impossible literally fell from the sky. A Halifax bomber equipped with H-2S was shot down during an attack on Rotterdam and crashed in occupied Dutch territory. German teams reached the wreckage in minutes and found the metal box intact. When they opened it, they were stunned. There lay a cavity magnetron, technology that German physicists believed was years away. Hermann Göring called an emergency meeting. How is this possible? Our scientists said we were the leaders in radar technology. German engineers immediately began reverse engineering, but the damage was already done. For 5 crucial months, between January and June 1943, U-boats had been hunted without knowing why. And in those 5 months, the Battle of the Atlantic changed completely. In May 1943, a month that would become known as Black May, the Kriegsmarine lost 43 submarines. 43 in a single month. Admiral Dönitz wrote in his diary, "We have lost the Battle of the Atlantic. The enemy possesses detection resources that we cannot understand or combat." On May 24, he ordered the temporary withdrawal of all U-boats from the North Atlantic. But let's go back to that early morning of May 10, 1943. Convoy HX-237 was carrying 42 merchant ships with 300,000 tons of vital supplies, tanks, ammunition, fuel, and food. The naval escort was minimal, just 4 corvettes and 2 destroyers. British intelligence knew that 28 U-boats from the Donau Wolf Pack were positioned in an arc, waiting for the convoy to pass straight into the trap. Commander Gretton knew he was desperately outnumbered. But he had 2 secret trumps. The first was the pizza box. 3 liberators from 120 Squadron equipped with ASV Mark III radar were on their way from Iceland. The second was Ultra. British cryptographers at Bletchley Park had deciphered German Enigma messages and knew exactly where every U-boat was positioned. At 4:15 a.m., still in complete darkness, the first Liberator arrived in the area. Immediately, the radar screen showed multiple contacts, 8 U-boats on the surface, forming the outer patrol line. The pilot, Squadron Leader Bullock, selected the nearest target. Contact Alpha, 6 miles, beginning approach. At 1 mile, he descended to 150 feet and turned on the lee lights. U-boat U-456 was illuminated like it was on a theater stage. The German crew was on deck, totally exposed. The commander shouted emergency dive, but it was too late. 4 depth charges fell in perfect sequence. The first exploded 10 meters from the hull, rupturing the pressure plates. U-456 sank in 90 seconds. Only 6 men managed to escape into the freezing water. Over the next 40 minutes, the 3 liberators performed a deadly dance over the dark ocean. Radars detected, searchlights illuminated, and depth charges fell. U-boat after U-boat was forced to dive precipitously, damaged or sunk. By 5:30 a.m., as the sun began to rise, 7 German submarines had already been destroyed or severely damaged. Admiral Dönitz, at his headquarters in Paris, received panic messages via radio. Donau Wolfpack to BDU, under massive air attack. Cannot remain on the surface. Request permission to withdraw. Dönitz could not understand. How were British planes finding them in the dark? He ordered the U-boats to remain submerged during the day and only emerge at night, far from the convoy. But that was exactly what Gretton wanted. With the submarines forced to stay submerged, their speed dropped from 17 knots to just 7 knots. They couldn't keep up with the convoy. Furthermore, while submerged, their batteries drained quickly. When they finally tried to emerge at night to recharge, the liberators were already waiting, guided by radar. It was a deadly cycle: emerge, get detected, dive, drain battery, emerge again, get detected again. For 5 consecutive nights, the liberators hunted the Donau wolf pack without rest. On the morning of May 15, Convoy HX-237 arrived in Liverpool with 41 of its 42 ships intact. Only one merchant ship had been torpedoed, on the first night, before the liberators arrived. On the German side, the cost was devastating: 12 U-boats sunk, 16 severely damaged and forced to return to base. The entire pack of 28 submarines was eliminated without managing to even position themselves for a coordinated attack. Karl Dönitz was furious and confused. He summoned his surviving commanders for detailed interrogations. How did they find us? What did you see? The answers were always the same: total darkness, then sudden light, impossible to react. One commander reported, "It is as if an invisible hand is pointing us out to the enemy." There is no logical explanation. German intelligence had theories: infrared detectors, spies embedded in the submarines, even collaboration with the devil. But the simple truth, that pizza-sized box, was never considered plausible until the Halifax crash in June. And by the time they finally found out, it was too late. German production of countermeasures would take months, and in those months, hundreds of additional U-boats were sunk. The impact of the ASV Mark III radar went beyond numbers. The morale of German submariners collapsed. Previously, the night was their protection, their advantage. Now, the night was when they were most vulnerable. Experienced commanders refused to emerge. Crews requested transfers. The volunteer rate for U-boat service plummeted from 80% to less than 20% in just 3 months. Between January and August 1943, 123 U-boats were sunk, most detected by ASV Mark III radar. Production of new German submarines could not compensate for the losses. And without U-boats dominating the Atlantic, the Allies were able to transport the 2 million soldiers and 5 million tons of equipment necessary for the invasion of Normandy. Commander Peter Gretton was awarded the Distinguished Service Order. At his ceremony, he held the small metal box and said, "This object the size of a pizza saved more lives than any medal will ever be able to recognize." Winston Churchill, in his memoirs, wrote, "The Battle of the Atlantic was won by mathematicians, engineers, and a small magic box." Hermann Göring, when he finally saw the capture magnetron, had a nervous breakdown. He screamed at his engineers, "How did you let us fall 5 years behind the British?" The truth was simpler: while Hitler invested in vengeance weapons and megalomaniacal projects, the British invested in applied science and practical engineering. A small pizza box was worth more than 1,000 V-2 rockets. Of the 28 U-boats of the Donau wolf pack that faced Convoy HX-237, only 3 survived the war. The rest were all sunk in the following months, most detected by the same radar that surprised them that May morning. Their crews, over 600 men, rest at the bottom of the Atlantic. Admiral Karl Dönitz never publicly admitted that he had underestimated British technology. In his memoirs, he blamed Allied numerical superiority, betrayal, and bad luck. But in a private letter to a former U-boat commander, he wrote, "We fought against ghosts that could see in the dark. How can one defeat an enemy that sees the invisible?" Commander Gretton kept a replica of the radar box for the rest of his life. In post-war interviews, he always said, "People ask what the most important weapon of World War II was. Some say the atomic bomb. Others, the fighter jets. I say it was a pizza box with a magnetron inside. Because without it, we wouldn't have made it to Normandy." The corvette HMS Sunflower, where it all began that May morning, survived the war and was decommissioned in 1947. Its bell is on display at the Royal Navy Museum in Portsmouth, with a plaque that reads, "From the ship that won the Battle of the Atlantic with technology the size of a pizza." It is a strange tribute, but an accurate one. The ASV Mark III radar was produced in the thousands. By the end of the war, over 600 Allied aircraft were equipped with the technology. The sinking rate of U-boats jumped from 2% to 75% in areas patrolled by equipped liberators. The Germans sank 3,500 Allied ships during the entire war but lost 783 U-boats, 3/4 of them after the introduction of microwave radar. Today, cavity magnetrons are in every microwave oven in the world. The same technology that heated the food of German submariners while they slept in ports was also the technology that hunted them in the open sea. Historical irony or poetic justice, the choice is yours. But one thing is certain, that pizza-sized box changed the course of history. And Karl Dönitz, the man who mocked the idea of radios inside planes, ended the war as a prisoner, signing the German surrender after Hitler committed suicide. In his last official report, he wrote, "We lost command of the seas not for lack of courage, but by underestimating the ingenuity of the enemy." On the morning of May 10, 1943, he had 28 submarines ready for the greatest attack of the war. By the next day, he had none. And it was all because of a pizza box he never believed was possible.